beginning of June. About the first or second weekend, it starts to get to the stage where I like to build what's called the king salad, and there's just all this stuff that you can that's gorgeously delectable and edible, and for a big part, long ways into summer and into fall too. I mean, there's tons of food out there.
What's happening, people? Welcome to Your Forest. I'm Matthew Kristoff, and today's podcast is an exciting one. It's one I've been thinking about a long time. Lately have had this obsession with creating a meal completely from the natural world, right? So, getting some leafy greens that you forage yourself, and some mushrooms and some berries, and maybe making a reduction out of the berries with, some like bone marrow or bear fat or something like that, and then having the entire thing be from the natural world. It's just a cool idea, a romantic idea in my mind. And with that idea, I brought on Kelly Harlton. Kelly Harlton, you guys might remember from the Wilderness Survival podcast I did a while back. He was really good on that one. And I wanted to bring it back on, talk about like food foraging and edible plants and just things you can eat from the bush. So it's a really cool one. He's going a mile a minute because there's so much out there, and he's just trying to get all the information out. So he lists off a bunch of plants. We don't really describe the plants. He just tells you which plants you can kind of eat and for what purposes. And it was really good. I think you guys will really like it. So kind of stuff we talked about was how you can make your own bush tea, right? So making tea from stuff you find in the bush, what you can use tree sap for, how you can make syrup out of it or use it as as water for bush tea and that kind of stuff. A little bit about mushrooms. They're more complicated, but a little bit about that. Eating dandelions and cattails and just stuff you see normally when you're out in the bush. Not that dandelions are in the bush. They're non-native, but you see them all over the place around town. So, and then eating rose hips, cooking with bear fat. Not a lot of people know that. It's really common. Cooking with bear fat. It's perfect for that purpose. Rabbit starvation, making salads from leafy greens, all kinds of different stuff. So you guys are gonna like it a lot. I think you'll enjoy it. Sponsors for this episode: Green Lake Forestry was the original sponsor, and Damage Timber is secondary sponsor. They are apparel company. You can go to damagetimber.com, put in Your Forest 10 at checkout and get 10% off. They give 10% of everything they do to a scholarship for environmental sciences. So check them out at damagetimber.com. The primary sponsor for this podcast, and I can't thank them enough, is West Fraser. And West Fraser's funds are available through the Forest Resource Improvement Association of Alberta. And I couldn't thank West Fraser enough for their funding. Helps me to keep doing this, and I really appreciate it, guys. Thanks a lot. And without any further messing around, let's get into it. Let's do it. Wild edibles. Here we go. Well, I was thinking the first way to start it off is I think a lot of people, when they think about the Boreal forest, they kind of, you see survival shows and stuff like that, and they say like this is a barren landscape. There's not a lot of edibles out here in the wintertime, and it's you know what I mean. There's no berries. There's no this. There's no that. And you hear this constant like beating into your head that when you're out in the bush in the Boreal in the wintertime that there's not a lot to eat. Is there truth to that, or is that kind of just a lack of complete knowledge? I would imagine it's probably a lack of complete knowledge, but
well, yeah. Let me say that's going to be a bit of both because. Yeah. Without kidding ourselves, we need big calories, and to try to glean that from plants at the best of time, even the most primest time of the year, maybe July or something. You still in terms of what you can glean from the forest for say edible plants, and that is still not limited. I mean, copious amounts, but in terms of calories and the elusive carbohydrates and things like that. Yeah, good luck, Charlie. So In the winter, yeah, for sure. I mean, there's some sneaky sources of stuff in the winter that people step over. I mean, you can still dig anthills. You can still tear rotten logs apart. You can still, like lots of places, if you know the bush well. I mean, I can walk into the bush and I can dig up some sarsaparilla roots. They're edible all year round, and they tend to grow in looser soils that don't freeze. And and then, of course, you can always, if you want to do the work, I mean, you can start chopping through ice and getting down to cattail roots and things like that. I mean, but realistically, yeah, I mean, in the winter, if you were to persevere, you would really hope that you've done a good job of preparing for winter, and you got things in the larder, and you've harvested game, and
so there is some truth to it. Then it is definitely more difficult in the wintertime. Is it?
Oh yeah,
just access and also like calorie requirement is probably just
everything,
high, right?
Everything. I mean, you got cambium on the trees, but that doesn't get primed till later in the spring, and right, so it's not much of an edible. It's hard to deal with, and so there's just the things just aren't rampant and collectible in large volumes. So, but having said that, though, but the availability of medicines and teas and supplemental things like for your vitamins and minerals and those kinds of things. I mean, there's still lots in the winter,
right?
So that part is can be dispelled.
But it's not obvious though. It's stuff you need to like.
Right. You have to understand. Yeah.
Awesome. I feel like I want to get into the specifics of like a bunch of different stuff.
Sure.
And where we're gonna go, who knows, right?
Yeah.
I was thinking to start off, are there any kind of rule of thumbs when it comes to like edible plants in the wild? Like certain things, like, I don't know, maybe there's like don't eat really bright colored stuff, or I don't know, mushrooms, black mushrooms are bad, or I don't know. Like, is there?
No, unfortunately. I mean, to some, I know in the military instructor stuff, I work with the rangers a bit, and they've got a sort of a system they go by, and it's something like 90% of blueberries are edible, and whereas only 75% of red berries are edible, which and only like 10% of white berries are edible. So on the scale of edibility, if you lean more toward the blue colored berries, you're more likely to have more. Those
probability of not dying is good.
Well, I mean, and then they have these edibility tests that they promote, which is really cool. I mean, you're first on the skin, and then you rub it on your lip, and then you taste a bit, and you do go through these motions, which is very cool.
How long do you wait in between doing those things?
Well, varies around a little bit, but I think reasonably speaking, if you don't get a reaction rubbing something on some sensitive skin in a matter of hours, then you're likely pretty safe.
Okay, so try over hours. Do it.
Not
like rubbing your skin. Well, it seems fine.
Yeah. You should give it some time for sure. But again, sometimes in the case of plants, there's families that you can lump together, right? There's safe families. The chickweed family is safe. So in the chickweed family, mouse-eared chickweed, bladder champion, our regular garden chickweed, like all the chickweeds are essentially edible, and they're easily identifiable by the blossom has the cleft petal and all this stuff. And once you taste the chickweed family, they taste very similar.
Okay.
So that's one stance you can take for trying to group things together is focus on families, because you'll find pretty much some families have a couple of nasty, there's certain pea family has some real nasties but some really choice edibles too. That's an example, but for the most part, mushrooms, no rule of thumb. I mean, in a certain area, maybe grandma says something and it tends to work in an area, but it's just you can't. Everything I've ever heard about guaranteeing that a mushroom's edible, someplace else it can still be deadly, or nasty. Same with a lot of plants. Like it's when you can't eat what the squirrels eat. They'll eat stuff that we can't eat, and it is hard. Yeah. So
I guess that was my question. Was more, is there an easy kind of like a, you know what I mean, like a 2-pager thing that people can write down or have, and they can be like, okay, I know what I need, I can and can't eat, but it's not quite that. There's
always this handful of, every ecology has this sort of handful of plants that, you walk into ecology and there's likely about 10 plants that are sort of the delectables there, or really high quality, or that can be worth focusing on for the newbie.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing beats just good knowledge and learning the whole gamut, but generally there's the plants that shine, both with the 10 or 15 or 20 medicinal plants that you ought to know, and 10 or 15 or 20 edible plants in every given ecology you should know, and then eventually when you know all those plants in all the ecologies, it starts to add up to the hundreds. But but not everybody has that time. Well, that's it. So, but again, this whole plant thing, I mean, in our part of the world, it's different elsewhere, but in our part of the world, I mean, there's not I mean, we've got a few things that are really worth going out of your way for, but essentially, yeah, if you didn't have, I mean, the preference is always to have some good knowledge around plants because they're so important. Again, a bunch of levels, medicinal teas, and even just for flavor and for just specific vitamins and things like that that you're lacking, right? But geez, if everybody, there's nobody you could take in the bush that couldn't identify a few berries that they're familiar with.
Right.
Everybody knows what rose hips are. Everybody knows what blueberries are. Everybody knows what Saskatoons are. Everybody, and so that's almost enough there. And then weeds, like the weeds are widespread, and so many of our garden weeds that we know from the garden we find in the wilderness too.
Yeah,
and they're quite excellent. A lot of them, not all of them, but a lot.
Well,
of them.
Even just like simply like dandelions. Like, what do you do with dandelions? What's the edible part? The whole thing? Or?
Oh my goodness! Oh yeah, well the whole thing, of course. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. I mean, there's volumes on dandelion. Like it's medicine.
Not that it's a native plant, but
no, and there's so
it's
many,
everywhere. Still,
oh, yeah. So many of our plants we pick on are no longer native. Well, a lot of these plants, the reason they're here is because they have such high value and have so many uses that they didn't get transported here by accident. A lot of them were brought here because people from over the pond wanted plants familiar to them, so that they brought them to their homesteads. And
right,
yeah, for sure.
Because you could make like just salad from dandelions. You can make like what's the root good for?
Well, the root, of course, is it's particularly in a more mature plant. It's quite bitter, so it makes an excellent coffee.
Oh,
but having said that, you get the dandelion at the right stage, and the root becomes. Sometimes you got to boil it in a change of water first, but not always. But it's a fairly edible root. A lot of roots are like that. First year root before the plant flowers the first time, the root is quite tender and quite tasty, and then anything after that, the root begins to become tough and fibrous.
Right.
So it's at that stage that we use it for beverage, for coffee, and other things.
When you say beverage for coffee, you mean you just grind it up?
Oh, absolutely.
And use it as a.
Oh, if you've never had dandelion coffee, that is the easy way to amaze your friends. Just dig up a bunch of tap roots from your garden, from your lawn, from your dandelions, and wash them up, cut them up, and you can roast them on a cookie sheet in your oven, or if you like, or around a fire. Or the simplest way I do it is you put it into a hot frying pan and keep rolling them around until they darken brown or black, and then you grind them up and use it exactly as you would coffee grounds.
Is there caffeine in it?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Dandelion's related to chicory, and chicory is an ingredient.
Same family, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you'll see that as a additive in some coffees, or for a while there was anyway. They used to advertise as having chicory in their coffees.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So
like,
but yeah, you're right. Salad, medicine. There's all kinds of things about the dandelion being a blood purifier, and if you've got warts, try the white milk from a dandelion. Oh yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah. Some people just find that amazingly effective
on warts.
Yes. Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Sounds like some hippy dippy shit.
Yeah. No, for sure. But whatever. My daughter, when she was small, Pepper, right?
It works.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. We used it on her warts, and then like there's ways of making wine out of dandelions and fritters and recipes in Peterson's Guide for Cooking the crowns, they call it, which is the point that the root sort of meets the leaves there, and then as a boiled pot herb, the dandelion can be a bit of a bitterish. You have to shop. Like my native friends used to say that they used to identify 13 different species of dandelion. I don't know if they'd actually be real species. In my mind, they'd likely be just dandelions growing in different environments. In the shade, sometimes you see dandelions a meter high and huge. they're ginormous, and they tend to be quite not that very lettuce-like. And then other times, it can be, you can hardly, you have to mix it with other greens because it's quite strong.
Yeah.
But generally, you get a win on them as a boiled pot herb too. Yeah.
So I guess I'm kind of jumping all over the place a little bit here. My brain is scattered, but I was thinking like right now, say wintertime, right now, what are some of the things that you could do right now? If, like, say you're stuck in the bush or whatever. What are some of the things you collect right now that you could eat? Whether it's raw or needs to be cooked first or whatever.
Yeah.
You said cambium, right? So I think a lot of people don't know that. The fleshy part of the wood under the bark is the cambium, and is that edible on every tree?
Well, I'm not going to say not. I mean, right. I don't think we have any poisonous cambiums. I mean, you look it up and you hear reference to them eating a lot of the different cambiums from the different trees. But honestly, myself, I've played with it quite a bit, and I have a hard time. The only like the cambium tends to be quite coarse. I've tried grinding it. Like, hear stories about making flour out of it, and you can look it up on YouTube, and you see guys making flour out of it. But when you look closely, they're just like grinding it up as fine as they can and adding it to flour and making it bread, which to me isn't a true, not actually making straight flour out of cambium. But, maybe there's people that can and do. I suppose if you could get it ground fine enough, but the value to me of the cambium is when a very specific short time in spring on certain trees, particularly for us, it's our pine and our aspen, when the cambium isn't, when the new stuff that's forming the cambium is actually a gelatinous substance just under the bark. Okay. And if you've ever read reference in manuals to the spaghetti on trees, a wonderful source of sugar and carbohydrate. So you peel the outer and inner bark off, and underneath you have this layer of, I'm going to call it sort of slime. Okay. But you take the back of your knife or a sharp stick, and you scrape down, and it just these shards of spaghetti-like stuff sit there hanging on the tree. And if you want to introduce people to an interesting edible, that's a prize winner, because, well, it's just full of shit. It tastes beautiful. I mean, two very bitter trees.
You do it in the wintertime?
Well, late like spring.
Spring, okay, springtime.
Spring, yeah, it's a spring thing. So late winter, early spring, yeah.
Gotcha.
And it, there's all these things about sometimes a sapling tastes better than a big tree and south-facing, and so sometimes it takes some shopping. And you're already facing a tree, so you have to be careful with where and how you do it. Yeah. But yeah, it's actually most people are just amazed that they get this. It's just so sweet. It has the aspen should taste like aspirin. Because of the salicin in it, and the pine should taste like turpentine, but no, they both taste at the right stage. They taste quite sweet, amazingly sweet. Yeah,
that's cool.
And high carb. Like, we have very little in the bush, or not much anyway, to find for carbohydrates. Right, but that is one source of carbohydrate. Yeah.
Trees, and tree sap, I imagine too, if you could manage to tap a birch tree or something.
Right. Yeah, right. Yeah, a little bit so. Birch tree sap, when you tap it, of course, is so watery. Like, it's there's probably a minuscule amount of carbohydrates, and what there is in there is more is a lot of minerals and things like that when you look it up with what's in birch water.
Yeah. I remember my dad used to make syrup. Yeah, and it worked out pretty good, but he was boiling it forever.
Oh my goodness. We used to make syrup a little more regularly out of it, but it's just a big, healthy birch tree that maybe you can hug with one arm, almost takes two, puts out 5 gallons of water in 24 hours. Yeah. So there's no issue getting the water, but to render it down into syrup, it's 100 to 1. Yeah. So, and the amount of heat energy it takes, and it's a real nice present and prize at the end, but we have more fun with just the birch water, because it comes out of the tree cold, and it's so clear and it's so pure, and it's been filtered through thousands of cells, and so we traditionally every spring get gallons of it and just drink it. Just natives traditionally used it, bathed in it, and washed their hair and brushed their teeth with it. It makes the most gorgeous bush tea.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what would you put it with to make bush tea?
Well, then just your favorite bush tea, but instead of in regular water, in birch water. Yeah.
And so just a little bit sweet, probably then.
Yeah, there's an essence of sweetness to it. Yeah.
It's cool. I don't know if I've actually ever just drank in the water before.
Oh yeah, we store it in mason jars and put it in the fridge, and it doesn't last long. Yeah, got to be careful because that little bit of sugar in it, it tends to get a yeast bloom in it fairly early on. So you can't you got to try and keep it cool, or some people freeze it too and things like that. But yeah, no, it's a favorite. But back to your question about so this time of year. I mean, there's lots of things you can do at this time of the year. In previous years, I didn't do one this year, but I'll do a tea walk right in the middle of winter.
Nice.
And there's still likely a couple of dozen things we can pick on for teas. Mm-hmm. Oh, we have funguses, buds, bark, twigs, skeletons of a lot of plants that are good tea plants. If the skeleton's still there, they'll often still make a nice tea. What else? Oh, my mind's blanking, but inner bark of some of our things we scrape. If you want a medicinal tea, right? If you got a headache, you're going to be scraping the inner bark off either an aspen or a willow, right? So
because it is both both the poplar, like balsam poplar, and willow. The buds have the black poplar. The buds have what do you call it? That the aspirin in it or whatever, right?
Well, it's actually it's related
acid
to salicylic acid. It's called the salicin.
Right.
And but no, the trees that actually have the salicin or the most isn't the black poplar. Actually, it's the aspen and the
aspen
willow.
does.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew willow did. I couldn't.
Yeah.
Okay. For some reason, I thought it was black poplar.
Well, if you've ever bitten into an aspen too, you'll get that same sensation as the willow. You taste like aspen, right?
Right.
Yeah. But
and that stuff actually works. It's potent enough that you can actually. Cure a headache
for sure.
Put that into a tea and drink it back.
Important medicine to know. Yeah, there's probably, I don't know. There's again, it's different in every given ecology, but just if we walked into the bush in the Edmonton River Valley here, there'd probably be about 15 things that were really important. That we would use for medicine.
Well, I guess that's the thing. Like, I'm trying to figure out how to make an hour-long podcast where we can like summarize kind of some interesting, cool things, right? So I guess maybe we'll talk about like some of the more common things that like anybody would know. Right? Like one thing I heard is cattails. You can eat cattails, right? So with cattails, I heard somebody just today. I was listening to something. They said that they've made like a faux barbecue chicken out of cattail, like the heads.
Oh yeah.
Like the brown, like
the seed heads.
Yeah, the seed heads.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know, but apparently it's edible. But I mean, it'd be so. I don't.
Of course,
I don't know how you do it, but have you ever heard that? No.
Well, there's a little conflicting information out there, but there's 6 identifiable edible parts of the cattail that are delectable in choice, and they are the roots and proper, and they can be boiled and baked and all kinds of things, or even mashed in the starch and the starch collected in the bottom of a pot too.
Oh, okay.
So what's interesting about cattails is we have a little bit of a saying that we can sometimes use, and it would go something like this. If you're ever in a survival situation and you happen on a patch of cattails, you may not be in a survival situation anymore.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Insulation, fire starter, we can make mats and roofing and the food sources from cattail. You've got the roots, the corms, you've got this tender core, you got the flower at a stage when it's edible like corn on the cob, you've got the flower when it turns to the yellow pollen as a gorgeous high quality flower or flower additive. The shoots, and lots of uses. There's this slime that develops between the leaves that is like an aloe vera, but it has a little bit of a deadening effect. So you can use it on infants' gums and all kinds of things. Like it's just a storehouse. Say like the fluff from the cattail. If you collect a bunch of them, it's actually very insulative too. So you can make torches out of it. You can use it as an additive for your tinder bundle. You can again fluff it up and put it between 2 articles of like 2 blankets or something and make a huge insulative blanket if you like. It's amazing how one head fluffs up into a great big pile of stuff.
Oh yeah, if anybody has ever touched, like grabbed one of those heads in the middle of summertime or something like that, and the whole thing blows up in your hand.
Exactly.
Like, yeah. No,
it doesn't take much. Yeah. So as a resource, amazing. We can make a rope and cordage, and we of course make you can make. Whatever.
You make rope out of the stalk itself?
No, the leaves actually.
Or the leaves. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. At the right stage, it makes a passable, lightweight but fairly bulky rope.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah. So.
And I guess another one would be like rose hips, right? So you always hear that rose hips are edible, and but as soon as you grab those rose hips and you bust it open to try and get the seeds out of there, there's next to nothing left, right? And they say you're not supposed to eat the whole thing whole because you get the itchy bum berry, right?
Exactly. You remember that? Hey, that's so funny. That's native. If folks that don't know, that's some natives, their translation for describing the berry is sort of. That's what it amounts to, is itchy bum berry. Yeah,
it's just the seeds irritating on the way out, kind of
thing. The seeds have little minuscule hooked hairs on them that can irritate the bottom end of your digestive system. Yeah, essentially, yeah.
But the berry itself, like the actual the
hip,
the flesh on it is actually really full of vitamin C, I think it is.
Yeah,
and so that'd be a really good one probably for wintertime if you're in a
huge
survival situation.
Yeah,
right?
it does hang on the trees. And there is, if you Google it, there's some interesting comparisons with the amount of vitamin C in a rosehip as opposed to an orange. Like it's pretty impressive.
So do you have like a foolproof way to explain how to I don't know how to dissect a rose hip or like properly process it so you're not eating berries.
Well,
and
myself,
asshole.
it's not, well, just myself. I mean, obviously you can put a beautiful additive to a bush tea. It gives you an appley flavor, but
appley flavor.
Appley flavor.
Yeah, give that a go. Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The rose hip itself. We've got two. We've got the common rose and we've got the prickly rose. And ironically, up where we are from about Edmonton North, the prickly is more common than the common. Right. The common has more coarser. What do you call them? Thorns or whatever. And its rose hip tends to be more round. The prickly, it has more and finer prickles, but the rose hip is oblong.
Right.
And, well, you guys can test me on this, but go out and sample the difference. And there's hands down, in most cases, the oval-shaped rose hip from the prickly rose is about twice as good as the rose hip from
really? Sweeter or what?
Sweeter, more flesh on the actual rose hip, and so I'll tend to, if I have the choice, I'll usually try to go for the oblong shape
for the tea. Yeah,
for anything.
Okay,
because you're talking about the minuscule amount of flesh covering the seed pod, essentially.
Yeah,
a little bit of practice, you can pop a rose hip in your mouth. I do this all the time. There's a beautiful trail-side nibble. You pop them in your mouth, and if you're really careful, you can actually, with your teeth, strip the skin and the layer of flesh. Basically, you're sucking it off the seed pod, and then all that remains is the seed pod proper. And it's unadulterated, and all the seeds are still in there. And you've just done this excellent job. So you can pop them in your mouth and get that out, and then spit out the seed pod, and then you can just go crazy with it.
It just takes practice, like chewing on sunflower seeds.
Yeah, exactly. You go a little too deep, and you start to get some of the hook seeds. You can still spit them out, but a little practice. Yeah, you just put it in there, and I can eat them a mile a minute, and end up spitting out the pod of seeds. Yeah, so get your vitamin C, because. Well, I mean, some places the rose hips are so prolific that it's worth.
They're everywhere in Alberta. They're everywhere.
Yeah, but I mean, if to try and some places they're adequate to pick in a high volume, say for making jams and jellies and all kinds of things. But for the most part, what we find is there's not. I'm not going to say sporadic, but it's not like. For me, they tend to get a pick handful for a tea or to eat a handful a day is the best way to manage them, because you're getting your vitamin C, and it only takes literally a few berries to get your vitamin C intake for the day.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna try to make a jam or jelly out of that, you just have to manually pulling the flesh off, I guess, and then.
Well, it's like a lot of like if you made rosehip jelly, of course, you end up boiling and making a mash, and everything goes through a cheesecloth, and so everything's collected anyway, and all the juice goes through, right?
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's a little tougher to make. I don't know about making rosehip jam. There's probably people that can and do, but yeah, I guess rosehip jelly.
Well, I heard of, what did I hear? It was like someone was talking about making I forget the word, some culinary word for like a reduced sauce for meat and stuff like that.
Reduction.
Reduction. Yeah, whatever. Yeah. Rose hip reduction.
Yeah.
Like how would you? I've always wanted to do that.
Oh yeah.
But is there a way to do that without spending like an hour seeding?
Oh yeah. Oh no. Pods? You just strain it. You would I think just boil them and then just strain it through a sieve or a
so that's
screener or a cloth. Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
For sure. And take the fluid. And, yeah.
I'm gonna try that.
That would be nice. Yeah,
I'm gonna give that a go this weekend. Actually,
yeah.
We're gonna be out at Martin Lakes Campground, I think, and
nice.
Gonna give it a go. So,
that's open right now. That's
apparently.
Okay.
We'll see if the weather doesn't hold up. We might cancel.
Okay.
But what else? What else was there? There was another thing I heard about from Winter. Actually, was from watching Les Stroud's show there, Survivor Man. He was talking about he was up in the Yukon or Northwest Territories or something where there wasn't rose hips around. Where he was kind of in a like a black spruce swamp or something, and he was talking about mosses that you could eat year round, right? But he was saying specifically in the wintertime when you're looking for those vitamins that you can't get a hold on because there's no berries or anything to eat.
Interesting.
Yeah, he was talking about making a tea or even just using it as or just eating it afterwards too, I think.
Do you remember which moss?
I don't remember. It was years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the edible moss is not a ton, but I know we've got a couple. Like one of them is our reindeer moss.
Moss.
Because it can be broken down. Like the issue with the moss is, I don't know. Actually, honestly, I can't say I've had a ton of experience eating mosses other than...
It might have been reindeer moss, I think.
Which it maybe isn't even a true moss. That may be a lichen.
Oh, it is. Too. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah, but it looks like it's low like a moss and all that stuff. But yeah, but speaking of lichens, some of our lichens are quite edible too.
Okay.
And some of them aren't very edible either.
It's like old man's beard.
Well, yeah, sort of. Like we've got the usnea, and
I don't
which
like
is
the sort of word.
yeah, well, because there's this thing about for usnea. It's one of our common ones, and it's one that's bright green, and it's more for medicine. Like if you, depending how you boil it and use it, it's a strong purgative, and you would put it between your toes to. It's sort of antifungal, so it counteracts athlete's foot and things like that, and so it's got some great uses. But having said that, there's a way to cook it and eat it, right? With the right changes of water and doing some things. But some of our darker lichens though are quite edible and even have carbohydrates and have much less usnic acid in them too.
Right.
So so there's some things we could pick on like that. But at the end of the day too, that's this whole plant thing. I mean, again, it's a survival food, and you can certainly do it. And
it's gonna be tough, though. I imagine.
We as humans, we need a lot of calories. I mean, I hate to say it, but like if you're rigorous and on the outdoors and you can't get 3,000 or 4,000 calories a day, then really you're not buying yourself anything by putting your body through that stress of having to try to digest something that's giving you so little.
Yeah.
And you're risking things like stomach upset, particularly when you don't have like fats and other things that you need to help break down other things, and so you're eating this raw stuff. So have a very what we recommend to people is have a very close look at fasting.
Right.
Because we're made to fast. I mean, that's in our whole human history. That's that's when food's plentiful, you eat, and when it's not, you may have to fast. But much more efficient. Yeah, the people that get good at fasting, even some of these crazy reality shows that are out there now. It's funny to see the shift because they're starting to understand that how important fasting is. So some of these guys that are doing well on these shows they've embraced getting themselves to a state that they get good at fasting, and then that gives them a real leg up.
The ketosis.
Yeah, exactly. So there's something to that. There's really something to that. Yeah. But the romantic notion of being able to strike off in the wilderness and live off the plants of the land in this part of the world, unfortunately, is exactly that, a romantic notion. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you could supplement your diet with it. But I mean, realistically, if you're stuck out in the bush, you need to get some protein or fat somehow.
Exactly. You're chasing critters. Yeah. Your animals are your salvation if you can.
What about insects?
Insects, wonderful, but we're not in the world's best ecology for insects, right?
You only got like 5 or 6 months a year where you can get them.
Yeah. In the winter, there's some you could pick on, but insects are top of they're huge.
So is there like as a quick, brief summary of what you can and can't eat of insects? Is it short a list of ones that you shouldn't eat?
I don't think we have anything in our ecology that you can eat. Okay. Any insects? No.
What about like spiders and centipedes and stuff like that?
I think, but again, there's this whole thing.
You think you can or you can't?
Oh, I would be surprised if you couldn't, especially after being cooked. But I mean, unless you can get a couple cups of centipedes to eat a centipede or to eat a spider or to eat that makes no sense. I mean, you could if you wanted, but I mean, it's like eating a fly or it's giving you nothing.
Yeah.
So if
worms?
Worms, I don't think there's any worms that are harmful. Yeah, absolutely.
But could you eat that stuff raw, or do you think you just like?
I probably. I haven't. I haven't eaten a raw worm. Lots of people that have. I'm sure it'd be okay.
I mean, kids do every now and again, right? But they seem to be okay. So
yeah.
I'm just thinking, like, if you know what I mean. If you're if you were real hard pressed for like some protein or something like that, if you know what I mean, you could stick your hand in the ground anywhere in the summertime and you'll pull up worms, right?
Sort of. It's funny. It's the day you go to find worms, you can't. Worms
in the bush too. Actually, I found that.
Yeah.
Like around like settled areas, it seems like they're everywhere. But as soon as you get into the bush, it seems like they're not as plentiful.
Exactly. Some of our worms are introduced too. They've come with us.
Really?
Right?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, it was obviously native worms, but I mean, our introduced worms. Yeah, we dig up the soil and we get copious handfuls out of your garden or your lawn at home. But you go to the bush. You're exactly right. You go find a worm. You're fishing and you're happy if you can find 2 worms. It's just not the same. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting hearing people talk about it now too. But there's a word for eating insects.
Yeah.
I forget what it's called, but regardless, anyways, it seems like people are at the global scale. A lot of like places that don't have a lot of nutrition, like even in like Africa and that kind of and places that are more arid, they seem to be moving towards like we can somehow market eating insects. 'Cause apparently it's a super sustainable, super
you
efficient.
bet. Oh yeah, they multiply like crazy. They're high in protein. Yeah, there's a real movement. If we could get rid of our food prejudices, we might be able to solve any food shortages that come up if we just eat insects. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's a
No,
weird
wonderful,
one.
wonderful story. I'm jealous of places and ecologies that they can just about subsist off them. Right. They grubs and slugs and big grasshoppers that you can ride just about. So, So they definitely got a leg up from us. But yeah.
So I guess moving on from kind of the winter access things, not that insects are winter access, but so stuff like, because I always think about like in the summertime, like flowers and grass and even just leaves. That kind of, like, I realize you can make teas out of a lot of that stuff, right? Like I like balsam and spruce needles and stuff you can make teas out of, right? And there's vitamins involved in that, and there's so like so say in the summertime, would you say it's likely that you could survive off eating just plants, or is that like, I mean, you're still going to need those fats and those proteins probably,
right on, but it's still there are, I mean, it like, this is kind of the twist of irony. The places that are the most prolific and have the most biodiversity and have the most amount of plants that you could likely, if we're going to try to take an attempt at subsisting off of, are all the places that we've all inhabited and then we've settled and that we live, because of course that's what brought us here, right?
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden we think we're going to strike off into the sterile forests of the mountains and the more remote areas of our Boreal and which things have to, like, it's just not the same growing conditions, it's just not the same soils and so it's yeah. I mean, I hate to bust people's bubble that way, but like beginning of June, about the first or second weekend, it starts to get to the stage where I like to build what's called the king salad, and there's just all this stuff that you can that's gorgeously delectable and edible, and for a big part, long ways into summer and into fall too. I mean, there's tons of food out there. I mean, it's not an issue about volume. It's all falls back on proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. Well, the plants have neither. What do the plants have in of those three?
Yeah.
Well, there's some plants that maybe have some carbohydrates, but not all that many, and then there's very few that have fats, and there's very few that have protein. So it's like, oh boy, so what role do the plants play for us in the our human physiological
those essential
self?
amino acids, right? Like there's what is it, 9 or 11 essential amino acids?
Maybe,
I can't remember how many, but there's plants are missing a lot of them, right? Whereas most meats have all of them. So it's kind of, right. Well, besides rabbit, right? Rabbit's missing one of them, which is why apparently you can starve to death by eating only rabbit, because it's missing an essential amino acid that your body can't live without. I don't know which one it is, but
but something that comes from fat, I'm guessing, right? It's
a fat or a protein. And for whatever reason, it's not in rabbit flesh. Maybe if you ate the organ meat or something. But
that's you've heard the term coined caribou starvation. You've heard
caribou starvation too.
Same thing.
Oh, they're missing an amino acid as well.
Well, it's not so much that they're. I mean, at a certain time of year, caribou in the fall when the short period of time when they have copious amounts of fat, apparently that's fine. But for the rest of the year, the meat's quite lean, and rabbits the same thing. They said if you ate every scrap and the brains and everything and all the internal fat and any kind of then you have a better chance of going longer on eating rabbits, but you nailed it. It's actually protein poisoning, and it's really what it is translated as fat deprivation. If you had copious amounts of fat to eat and all the rabbits in the world, then likely the rabbits you could subsist off if you could eat the fat, alternate fat. But the rabbits themselves don't have enough fat. Well, I mean, it's just where's the line? Short-term survival, rabbits would be fine if you eat as much of the rabbit as you can. If you decided to make a living year-round eating rabbits, you're not gonna do it, right?
No,
but for a period of time, you can get away with it. But
I guess I did a podcast like about a week ago with Bill Abercrombie. He's a trapper around here, and you know him?
Yeah, mm-hmm. Through Ross Hinter's mention of it, a good friend of mine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's me and Ross been hanging out a while.
Nice.
Lately, to my thrill, and he mentions Bill a bit.
I brought him on talking about beaver ecology and beavers in general as like a we talked a little bit about the history of the history of the fur trade, and then but talking about their ecology and their importance like on the landscape and that kind of stuff. But then I remember listening to the Meat Eater podcast where he was talking about like the mountain men surviving in the wintertime in the Rockies and stuff, not necessarily in the Rockies, but you know what I mean, in the wintertime in the bush. And they said that one of their favorite meats was beaver,
thanks
because
to
of the tail.
Yeah.
Right, the tail is a big fatty. Well, I guess the whole thing is fatty, but the tail specifically they said was their favorite because they just had that fat starvation or whatever and wanted to just craved it. Yeah, it's interesting because
have you ever eaten a beaver tail?
No.
Oh my goodness!
I'm sure it's slimy and not.
Oh,
great.
it's the biggest piece of gristly fat. It's fat, all right.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness! And we've eaten it a couple different ways, and some with success and some with not. So the last way we've eaten it that's worked well is you skin the tail and then you shave off chunks of the fat and you throw it in a pan and get it very hot, and it melts and it starts to deep fry in its own fats, or you can add other oil or whatever. Right. And essentially deep fry it like a bacon puffs.
Right. Oh, okay.
And now it goes from kind of like you'd have to be pretty fat deprived to enjoy a beaver tail.
And that's what I heard too.
Oh my goodness.
It's not like it's just like that they were literally like starving with no fat.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh my God, fat, thank God. Yeah.
But on the other hand, beaver meat itself, beaver themselves are quite fat.
I've heard.
So they're what I'm going to call a salvation animal. There's a few salvation animals. One is animals that have fat all year round. Beaver is one because they live under the ice.
Right.
So extraordinarily important. Bears are another one. One of the animals. I mean, obviously, good luck finding them in the winter, but still, it's one of the animals that you can harvest at any time of the year, and they have copious amounts of fat. So if you were serious about living in the wilderness, then you need a good fat source. So your good fat sources come from animals for a short window of time in the fall, and then from animals like beaver and bears all year round, right? But a
lot of people that like spend a lot of time out in the bush, they'll actually harvest like a black bear or something like that and use the fat as like cooking oil, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So you do that too, eh?
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Rendered. Buddy of ours, I'll give him a shout out, Blake Towsley, buddy of ours. He's kind of getting a reputation for, he tries pretty hard for bear, and he always collects all the fat, and he doles us out our annual supply of rendered bear fat, and
so how does he render it down?
Oh, just it's a very simple process. You cut the fat up, literally put it into the bottom of a frying pan or in a pot or frying pan, and you just simmer it, and eventually what you're actually doing is you're driving all the water out of it because the water is what makes the fat go rancid. So once all the water's out of it, then you strain the fat, the lumps out of the fat. The little giblets left behind are like little bacon puffs too. So that's actually a little delectable treat. You can eat some of those. But yeah, so you strain off the ensuing liquid into jars and let it set up, and it makes a pure gorgeous rendered fat. Yeah,
that's awesome. And it's funny too because I've heard, and this is off topic. This is way off topic, but I'm going to say it anyways. I've heard now that we're starting to realize that actual like olive oil and canola oil and all these vegetable oils that we're creating are actually way worse for us in the long run.
I know.
Than
we're
beef tallow and stuff,
exactly.
Right?
We're going right back to where we came from.
It's this weird circle. We're just like, it turns out that we should have continued to cook fries and beef tallow, not vegetable oil, right?
I know.
And you can look into it. I can't paraphrase it, but apparently that's the truth. And it's interesting to hear that because I'm like, well, I kind of want to go back to doing, not back to, I want to start cooking in bear fat. Not that I don't even harvest bears, but I would start for that reason, right? And start like the part that weirds me out though is the trichinosis, right? I don't like if I'm going to harvest something, I want to eat the whole thing. Right. The trichinosis in bears is so rampant that it just kind of, I'm like, I don't know. So I've never done it really, but it's definitely intriguing for sure.
Well, by this time in my, here we are supposed to be doing plants and we're talking about,
that's
okay.
Whatever. But it's edible stuff.
In my illustrious career, I've likely at this point in time have fed bear meat to, probably getting close to the thousands, definitely hundreds, easily hundreds. It's for a lot of years it was a little bit of my trademark, and still one of my favorite meats. But again, to be fair, you want, you don't eat the old steer and you don't eat, or the old bull, you don't eat the old cow, you eat the yearling steers, right? Yeah. So when you're thinking bears, that's exactly what you're looking for is yearling, and it's sure nice if they got a mouthful of clover and the hinds and the back straps and things like that. Trichinosis, yes, but so all meat handling, be careful if you got cuts on your hands, and meat should be cooked, properly. Yeah. Bear meat, a lot of times it's an awesome candidate for braising and slow cooking and those kinds of things.
Yeah,
and,
I suppose you could do lots of slow cooking. I made a bear ham here once actually for work.
Oh, okay.
But I over cured it, it was just mushy. And it tasted like ham, but it was mushy and it wasn't very good on the palate.
Texture-wise,
kind of ruined it. But
good for you. That's cool.
Yeah,
right on.
But so like those types of things, I guess, are in order to survive in the wintertime and even just in the boreal period, you need to be getting some kind of source of protein and fat and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, plants. So think plants. Teas, medicines, utilitarian, adding flavor. So it's still an important role. And still, right. I mean, let's be honest, there's lots of things we need in trace amounts. So just because we don't have copious amounts of protein, fat, and carbohydrate, that doesn't mean that we don't need many vitamins and minerals and things that come from plants just for general health. So, and in our wilderness, in a nice biodiverse piece of wilderness in our boreal, there is a lot of things we can pick on. And numerous amounts of, if you're a mushroomer, yes, of course, but tons of plant roots. Like we've got about 6 really important plant roots. Let's see if I can rattle them off. We've got bare root. We've got, of course, cattail. We've got sarsaparilla is an important root. We've got some of them are introduced to caraway roots are really important. Dandelion roots can be important. We've got I'm missing a bunch. Salsify roots, amazingly. Salsify, yeah. So that's a big dandelion on steroids. Oh, it's a goat's beard is another name for it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But again, first year plants, beautiful. Did I say caraway yet?
Yep.
Caraway. Also, just some ones that are just gorgeous to pick on. Sweet Cicely. Oh boy, if you can find that, that'll knock your socks off. So we do have an array of gorgeous, nutritious. Have a lot of energies in roots. So that's one of our go-tos,
I guess.
And then,
but you want those tuberous roots, I guess, is what you're.
Well, it's usually as a common theme. Just
it's not tree roots you're
no
talking about. These are
plants.
These are
plant roots.
Yes.
You betcha. You betcha. Yeah. So and
are most of them like? You think that like most of them are edible? Like how? I guess what I'm asking is there ones you should be watching out for? Like you're gonna poison yourself by eating any of those?
Well, we have we have we have some nasties. Oh yeah. We've got
I guess the key is you should know. Don't just like take a, you know what I mean? Like, I think this one's good.
Exactly. I mean, you could do things like the edibility test and that, but we have stuff that I wouldn't even want to rub on my skin.
Right.
Yeah. You think of the poison hemlock, water hemlock, things like that. Yeah. They don't even advise handling that puppy. Yeah. It's, so we do have some nasties. Yeah. It's daunting, edible plants, but you learn them one by one. Mm-hmm. That's the only way. And everybody asks me, how do you remember so many plants? Well, it's actually pretty easy if you create an association with that plant. Now, how do you create an association with that plant? Well, it's either got to be a feeling, a sense, a smell, a taste, an emotion, or something like that, because that's how it locks into your brain. So what I always say is start one by one. Once you've positively identified a plant, go out and harvest it, eat that plant, or use it for the medicine, or make the tea out of it, and then you've now got a relationship with it, and you'll never forget it. Right. Forget acronyms and books and all that kind of crap. And books are important, but no, create a relationship with that plant, and then you'll never forget it. And next thing you know, you're walking through the wilderness, and now all of a sudden it's a bit of a larder. You see all this stuff out there. Yeah, there's tons and tons. Yeah, I mean, there's literally hundreds of things out there that we can eat. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's weird because when I first. Like when I was growing up, I remember thinking that like, okay, of course you can eat berries and you can eat, fiddleheads, right? For those 5 days a year that they're they're poking out of the ground. You can eat them, right? And I never really thought about all this other stuff, right? Uh-huh. But it seems like there is an infinite amount of stuff that you could get into if you wanted to, whether it's for just like culinary delectables or just trying different stuff. Do you know any good? Obviously, you know a bunch of them, but what good books would you say if people wanted to get into this kind of stuff? What should they?
Well, for our area, the gold standard now has seemed to become, if you're going to have one book, it's the plants of the Western Boreal Forest. Right. Yeah, that's everybody should have that one in their collection for sure. But other than that, there's such an array out there. Yeah. Oh my goodness, the internet resources, and I don't think there's any really books that anybody's poo-pooing out there. Like
Right.
basically all that, there's, if you want books that are higher on the medicinal side, I mean, Willier has a good book out from Calgary, and there's a couple of, I'm just trying to, I actually was going to bring an array of books actually, and I should have in hindsight, just to show you some of my favorites.
Yeah.
But I also have some books that were written, they're actually duotangs written by some native people in that too.
Yeah.
So there's lots around traditional knowledge.
I was going to say, I'm sure there's a whole whack of traditional knowledge that we don't even tapped into, that they probably know what to do with every little thing that's ever been on the landscape, right?
Sure.
So I can't even imagine the uses that they use
knowledge.
that stuff for.
Yeah, amazing. Although having said that, I did spend a lot of my career up in Slave Lake, working with a lot of First Nations groups up there, and it is amazing. Like they have so much knowledge, but a lot of has been lost too. So it is a beautiful, beautiful information share when we get together up there. It's really cool because I mean, a lot of I get to fill my pockets and then get to impart on them some interesting things too. But yeah, so I just want to say that, so the importance of plants, the roots, the other important thing that people sometimes step over is seeds. That's another power-packed place. So the nutrition of a plant is really intensified and collected in the roots and the seeds at those times of year. So to get the most pizzazz from plants, so now you're getting into the realm of stuff that's pretty power-packed. So we have certain plants that are more easy to collect the seeds from than others.
Fats from there too.
Trace amounts, trace amounts. Yeah.
Okay, I was thinking like nuts, right? Like
nuts would be, yeah.
And a seed's just kind of in a way, it's a small nut, right?
No, for sure. We only have one true nut here, and that's the hazelnut.
Right.
And it's you're lucky when you can find it in the volume, but we do often find it in the volume to harvest. Yeah, I shouldn't say you're lucky, because it's when you do find it, it's
you're
kind
right
of
though. They're not as common like as they should be, right? Like beaked hazelnut's hard one to find. Yeah.
It needs wind to germinate, and but yeah, I've got my haunts where it does real well.
Yeah.
But again, it's intensive to pick, and for what you get, for what you pick, and what you put into it, unless you really get a industrialized system to pick at large scale, and so it's just an add-in.
So what seeds would you say that like are?
Well, a couple of real easy ones is our dock plants have copious amount of seeds.
Which ones?
The dock, curled dock, and western dock.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so big orange spike heads. You see it probably sticking out of the the high grass in sloughs and things like that. Strikingly red in the fall. Yeah, so it's easy to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's in the I'm going to call it the broadly lemongrass family. So it's related to sorrel and things like that. And docks and sorrels and smartweeds and that are sort of distantly related. And a lot of them have a lemony flavored leaf, by the way, which is an extraordinary salad additive.
Okay.
Or sometimes by themselves. Some of our sorrels are delectable by themselves. But anyway, they all have this very common seed head, and our dock is the biggest of this family, and it's easy to collect lots of seeds fairly easily. And another one is our you get the our white man's footprint, or which is common plantain.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's called white man's footprint for sort of two reasons, the way I understand it. One is that natives noticed that it tended to grow where white man is or went, so following his footsteps. But the other is it also grows literally where people walk, so on trails, parking lots, just actually where we collect, sort of thing. But in the right condition, gorgeous, nice stalks, easily collectible seeds, lots of volume, and with very little work, and extraordinarily nutritious, and there's others too. I mean, even plants like our amaranth and lamb's quarters, or pigweed, some people call it. Now they get sometimes gorgeously collectible seeds. So even pine nuts here, I'm sure would be edible, right? Like if you were to roast them over a fire and had like a capture of some kind, right? Maybe. Like sometimes I'll go into squirrel middens and find the cones that they didn't finish off that still have, because really for us they're not real. They're not like the true pine nut of that are on that are
big
more
ones.
coastal. Yeah.
Yeah.
But and they were quite minuscule as seeds, and so again, that's just something that maybe you could play with it and collect.
Well, I was thinking if you grab the pine cone that was like unopened, right, and you just kind of had it. Say you had like a catchment, like a piece of tin or something, or tinfoil or whatever, and you could just place it in there, let it open, and those seeds would fall out. Right? I'm sure those must be edible. But whether it's worth your time or not, I don't know. But if you're just trying to do something culinarily interesting, right, and make a meal that's all from the Boreal, then that would be. Yeah, it'd be kind of added to a salad or something. I don't know.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I've eaten the seeds just picked through and just eaten small handfuls of them, but to collect them in copious amounts, that would be fun too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you were talking about that. What was it? You said king salad.
Oh
Is
yeah,
that what you called it?
So
what's in that?
Oh well, there can be all kinds of things. It's just that at that the reason I always remember it's first week of June is because it coincides sometimes with the Songbird Festival in Slave Lake or whatever. Yeah, so timing, and that's always the first weekend in June. Right. So in my mind, and then it goes to about and then right to about the end of July. That's sort of the major window for the most lush, tender plants, right? Yeah. But so what are some of my favorites? I have so many. Oh goodness, all of our Carmon garden weeds, of course, for sure. Or not all of our garden, but like our lamb's quarters and to some extent the dandelions and things like that. For sure, the stinging nettle. Oh my goodness, if people haven't experienced stinging nettle as a pot herb, you won't eat spinach again once you have that. Gorgeous. But things like some nice lettucey things are wood violets. Oh my goodness, just a gorgeous wilderness lettuce.
Yeah,
and available till quite late. And then little secret things too, like on our cow parsnip.
Yeah, cow parsnip. I heard.
Yeah, like it's you need to be careful of that plant because it has a volatile oil on the hairs that can, if contact with your skin, it can make your skin photosensitive. So I have to give the warning on that one. But for the most part, the right stalks, you have to go shopping. Like anything else with wild edibles, you can't, you just grab something, taste it, and then you spit it out and go, okay, that's no good. I'm never going to do that again. In the case of cow parsnip, that's one of those example plants that sometimes you can have it where it's so tender and so sweet, amazing. And other times where it tastes like a really, really strong, pungent celery, and if you don't have the acquired taste for it, you'll spit it out.
So it's the shoot, not the leaves.
Well, yes, correct. It's not the leaves; it's the shoots. Some books say the roots, but I've never been successful. I've tried everything. I'm still working on it, but first year roots and boiled and dried and everything I think of. And the roots are. I think it's a bit of a misnomer from people. Just because it has parsnip in the name, everybody assumes that it's the root that's edible. But but the reason parsnip's in the name is because it tastes parsnippy. Gotcha. So that makes more sense. But yeah, for sure, the leaf stalks, either scraped with the hair scraped off, or with the cut in quarters and with the inside pith carefully shaved away. That's the part that's the most delectable. That's gorgeous. But there's also something that occurs when the flower first opens, and that's in about the first week of June. And before the flower opens, it's actually in a little pod. And you can actually just take that complete pod, and you can actually just slice it up as is straight into a salad, and it's quite a delicacy. So it's a nice little window of time to harvest that. What else?
A lot of flowers you can eat, hey?
But there's not too many flowers that aren't edible. Did I say flower? Yeah, it is a flower. Yeah, it is the flower in that one. But the flowers are definitely the flowers and seeds on the cow parsnip are very, very bitter. So it's important before it opens and it's in this little sort of pod shaped thing.
Yeah,
looks like a milkweed pod. Sort of.
I suppose that's the important thing is like edible versus palatable.
Yes, exactly. But there's lots of stuff that tastes beautiful. Like lots of great edibles. Just trying to think of what else. It's there is tons out there. I need to go. If I was walking with people, it's just so fun. There's just
collects your memory, right?
You're exactly.
Exactly. Yes, sitting here in an office doesn't really.
That's right. Yeah. But there's no. Not end of the message is. There is not for lack of amount of wild edibles out there. There is lots.
Yeah.
But particularly at certain times of the year over others. But it's just this how do you collect, what's in season, and are you using it for a garnish, or are you trying to use it for filler? I mean, all those things are valid.
Yeah.
But you're definitely not going to live off them. That's the
right.
point, yeah.
And I think for the most part, this is for I'm thinking culinary perspective.
I
started off kind of thinking survival.
So much fun,
right? If that was possible, and it's not really feasible, and then kind of it's like, all right, now and personally, I want to start cooking more with stuff that I can collect
Beauty,
and
yeah,
forage,
absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
So I've never really done it. I've talked about doing it. I've done it the odd time, but I want to get more into that. So I'm thinking,
good.
so like if you could name just like a couple books, that would be good resources for people. That would be like very straightforward, and it's like, you know what I mean? Whether it's for mushrooms or for plants or whatever. Which ones would you go with?
Well, I already said the plant one was plants of the Western Boreal Forest. If you're going to have one. And then I still love some of the I love the Peterson's guides and even though that they're broad scope, but they still have a ton of plants in them that are our friends here. And as far as mushrooms go, the Helen's book there.
That's one I've never been brave enough to go into is mushrooms. I'm like
but it's so addictive. There's so many beautiful, gorgeously edible mushrooms out there. I mean, just when we get a good mushroom year in Alberta, I mean, that's we have so much to offer in terms of fungus. Yeah,
that's still like it's more or less like a spring, early summer thing, right? Like you can't really collect them in the fall.
There is some fall mushrooms. There's a few.
Okay.
Oh yeah, sometimes our shaggy mains are best in the fall. We have a fall oyster. We have there is a few that go into the fall that are pretty good. But sometimes our comb tooth are still good in the fall. Yeah, we have a few. But yeah, prime time is July, August. But still, morels are May, right?
Right.
So and that's where it starts. Basically, the early.
Where do you find morels? I've never. I can't actively remember seeing morels.
Well, I mean, we sort of have a couple of strains. We have the one that chase the forest fires around, but those I rarely pick. Yeah, and right. So the first year after a fire, that's a great.
The problem is I'm always there during and immediately after the fire, never like later on for some reason.
Yeah. But we also have species that aren't related to fire. They're smaller and darker. I think they're better than the bigger, lighter colored morels that follow the fire. They're of course sought after by mushroom pickers and all that, mushroom buyers. But they are. I mean, you can't really. I mean, I like the morels that sort of come up every year. They're less volume and they're harder to find and they're darker and that. But all I'll say is we have our spots. But if you're
not going to give them up,
well, I mean, they there's places where I've hit jackpot one year and then I never see them again. Or maybe every year I go there and I find a few. Or like it is kind of a slippery fish. But what I would suggest if people are into it is you join the Alberta Mycological Society and they do forays and they focus pretty hard on the morels, and that's the way to get in the loop on where they're at, sort of thing.
We're gonna do that sometime.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I know it's a fabulous. If you want to, mushrooms are tricky because there is some nasties out there, and I thought I was doing good when I knew about 10 mushrooms, and then joined the Mycological Society and was sort of active with them for a couple of years, and went on a bunch of forays. And 3 years later, I was up to about 65 mushrooms. That's how fast, which is nothing.
Yeah.
But still, it's still the chance of me walking in the bush and not being able to find a couple of mushrooms to eat is fairly low now, right? Because I usually stumble on a few delectables. Right. So it's fun, and they're flavorful in texture, and they actually now showing that a lot of them have good things that are good for you in them and trace elements, and some of them even have fats and carbohydrates and all kinds of goodies. So it is kind of a you have to be careful with it, but
it's definitely one that I've never been brave enough to bother try. I'll pick them up and I'll go, yeah, maybe, and then you just text a picture to somebody who knows and like, well, no, definitely not.
Put that down.
Yeah, definitely
spit it out. No.
Don't even touch it.
There's lots of mushrooms too that. Well, if dried, they're okay, or cooked, or something like that, or like we have a family called the Rusilla, for instance. That the whole family. It's not necessarily nasty poison, but some of them are delectable and some of them are terrible. And after you do all the identification, the final test is you do actually taste it once you've identified it as Rusilla. And then when you do the little taste test, if it's horseradishy or strong, well, no, too bad, so sad. But if it's mild or you sort of bland, then it's an eater. Huh. So it's and there's some mushrooms that get attacked by other mushrooms, and so a mushroom that isn't all that edible gets attacked by another mushroom that isn't all that edible, but together they combine to make an extraordinarily edible mushroom. That's our green lobster and orange lobsters. Oh. Yeah, lobster mushrooms. Yeah, that's actually what they are.
So it's like a hybrid of the two?
Well, not a hybrid. No, one attacks the other, and it transforms it, morphs it into a completely different mushroom.
How rare is that?
Not rare.
Really?
I mean, well, in some like I mean, our orange lobster, like Eastern Canada, there's tons, and I think it occurs in BC too. Not so much in Alberta. We have a green lobster here, that we get that's edible. But yeah, it's kind of the funniest thing. This one mushroom attracts the other. Each mushroom in its own accord isn't all that great, and all of a sudden they combine and they make a delicacy mushroom. Like this sells for a lot of bucks. Say the orange lobster. Yeah.
Well, I imagine. Yeah. No, I know a lot of people that are. It seems like if you're into foraging for mushrooms, like you're into mushrooms, like you're all the way in. Like you take a week off of work and go collect mushrooms.
Well, yeah, kind of. But then there's people that there's the 1 or 2 or 3 that they pick every year. They know where they grow. They're okay with that. Every year they go pick their red tops or their shaggy mains or their morels or you know what I mean. And that's they're satisfied with that. I mean, you can do it that way too.
I think that's probably the way I would do it. But I gotta just go out with you one time and get you to show me.
Yeah. Well, that's just you can't beat it because when I actually hand you a mushroom. And this is the way I was taught. Guys like Martin Osis and Robert Dale Rogers, and they go, okay, look here, see this, see how the gills don't come here. Here, feel this, smell this. You're looking at all these and it's in your hand. It's not in a book,
right?
And you're making that attachment, and you just pick up mushrooms so much faster.
Well, that's the thing. I find books, like even plant books. You look at the plant book, and then you look at the plant, and you're like, but there's things wrong with this. Like it's not. It's not exactly.
I know. It's like, oh, so is it? So you have to multiple cross reference, and it's really helpful when you're identifying plants or mushrooms is to have both photographs and line drawings. Because the line drawing, the artist goes way out of his way to show you some of the idiosyncrasies that may not show up in the photograph. Right. So that's part of it. But nothing beats so cross reference. But if you want to learn, I mean, it's way faster just to go with.
That's what I was going to say. It's like the best way to go is just to go with somebody who knows and get them to teach you.
Take your camera or take samples. Like when we do plant walks, we often furbish the student with paper and tape, and then they just they actually take the samples home so they can look at them and see the idiosyncrasies and refresh their memory. But again, I'm all for eat the plant, use it for the tea, use it for the medicine. Create the association, and then one by one time goes by. If you learn 1 or 2 or 3 mushrooms a year and learn 1 or 2 or 3 plants a year, and 10 years goes by, do the math.
Yeah,
bang! It's very easy, very little work. Yeah.
No, that's what I have to do. I have to start actually putting some time into it because I've always wanted to do it, and every time I make dinner, I'm thinking like, damn, I wish I had something.
Well, there's some cool guys I could hook you up with too. Like I got my buddy of mine is a chef, and he used to come up to Slave Lake and pick some things and do exactly that, make these flary things. But there's guys like Kevin Kosonen. He has I don't know if you've seen his stuff from the wild.
Okay.
Oh yeah, go look his stuff up. Oh my goodness, he's got some trailers on YouTube, but he also does what's that? You got to pay to watch
Netflix or something?
No, Vimeo.
Vimeo.
Yeah, he's on there. Yeah. So he's got some fabulous stuff in there. But that's all he does is he walks around and game and plants and mushrooms and tries to figure culinary ways to do this stuff. And so he's kind of one of the kings at that too.
I think that's my plan this year. If I manage to harvest an animal out hunting, I think that day. I've never done this. I mean, I've had something from the animal like the day of, right? But what I've never done is made a full meal out of that, right? Like say you take some bone marrow and collect some rose hips and make a reduction and then get some mushrooms and then add in some blueberries or whatever. I've never done something like that. I just feel it'd be super neat to have an entire meal that is completely from the land. You know what I mean? Here, natural, like it's not, hasn't been farmed. It's just, it's you know what I mean? It seems cool. So I'm working my way into that world.
Sweet.
Right now I'm not in it. But
neat realm. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
For sure. It sounds cool. So if people want to get in contact with you or somebody that can do, they can go on a trip or get some resources, something like that. How would they get in contact with that?
It's easy now. Of course, I do walks and things like that, wild edible plant walks, tea walks, all kinds of good things like that. But you go to the forums now. For reference, on the end of this podcast, I'll give you a list, both of a couple of books to recommend to people for plants, but also there's some neat groups like I'm embarrassed that I don't know the name because it's just on my computer. I just click it, but it's like the what do we call it? The wilderness. I don't know. It's run by Rob Brower out of Calgary. He's one of the guys that runs the site. But people are just putting on their steady plant walks and mushroom walks and herbal walks and all this kind of stuff on all over the province. Okay. So that's the great resources. Yeah. Gang up with some of these groups. There's lots of stuff goes on. Actually, Robert Dale Rogers, of course, he does a lot of herb and plant walks and things like that. Sometimes he shows up at the botanical gardens there near Devon too. So that's a nice resource there. I do some walks for the town usually every year and groups and things like that.
Do you do some with Karamat?
Oh yeah, Karamat always. Yeah, I mean it's part of the course when you do there, and then
that's KaramatWildernessways.com?
Yes, yeah, KaramatWildernessways.com. That's the
and that's you're there with a bunch of other people.
I'm the lead. I have had the pleasure of being the lead instructor there since 2009, but it's not my school. It belongs to Randy and Laurie Brugema, which they do a fabulous job. And that's the school that's sanctioned by Morris.
Right.
So he's in the wings there. And
that's a full sort of like living with and in the Boreal forest,
that's
right?
that's one of the more intensive courses that you'll find in this
fire building,
part of the land.
shelter building, collecting food.
Your
trapping,
week is
probably,
exactly. Exactly. Primitive traps and snares and all kinds of stuff. First aid and axe use and medicines and bush teas and all kinds of knife skills and crafting and snowshoes and pack frames and saw frames and it's a very, very intensive course. Yeah. It's a fun. It's got its reputation and people come from all over the globe to take these courses.
Well, you dropped a humble brag before we started the podcast. That some executive from Google was there.
Exactly. Yeah, good friend. Yeah,
now he's with Facebook. It's like, he's obviously important.
So my friend Dario, Dario may even listen to this. Shout out to great guy, great friend. And what else? And there's these little gatherings that happen all the time. We got the winter one called Frostbite, not too much going on there with plants and mushrooms, but Rat Root. So at Rat Root Rendezvous, and that's I think the second last weekend of August-ish. But so there's always people doing plant walks and mushroom walks and things there. So just free and just the knowledge there.
Right.
And I'll do a walk there very often for people. And so that's a a cheap fun way is just get in check out some of these forums, which again I'll list the one main one anyway that we're using in Alberta right now.
I'll put it as a link at the end of the podcast. If you send me the links, I'll just throw them into the and people can just click right on them.
Perfect. Yeah, and that's a great starting place because it's admittedly you got the wild edible plant book in your hand and you're wandering through the forest and you're raising your eyebrows. Is this really the plant that I'm looking at in the book? And and for sure. So that's it's a good start. And still people do that, but and please do that. But still, that's no. There's lots of knowledge base here in this province and people that are willing to do walks and paid courses too. You could just pay money and take plant courses too. Yeah,
but the way to do it is out in the bush for sure. I know you learn so much faster that way, right? Because it's just like the volume of information coming at you in the bush that's like you can tie into the real world.
Right.
It sticks better. It's just
just think about this. That mushroom is fixing the nitrogen for that tree, which is and by the way, this you create the things in context.
Yeah.
When you look at a plant by itself and you pick a leaf and you take it to your house and you compare it, but it's just not the same.
You don't know where to find it.
Right. What's it growing with exactly? And what's the time of year? And what's is it shady or sunny where it is? And is it on a south-facing slope or is it in is it a well-drained area? All these things. I mean, now that's meaningful. You're learning this plant, but you're learning its surroundings. But so that's
much there.
Yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely. Yeah.
Well, this is a solid, very information-packed hour.
Okay, right.
But we'll definitely throw those links at the end there, and it'll be perfect.
Okay, super.
Thanks a lot for coming on, man.
Oh yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was
great
good.
fun. Okay, cheers, mate.
Thanks a lot for listening, guys. If you guys have any questions, you can contact me at yourforestpodcast@gmail.com. I'll make sure to get back to you. Make sure to rate and review and comment, all that kind of stuff. It helps me know what's going on and what people like and don't like. So, let's do this. Thanks a lot, guys. We'll check you out next time.